The Rams have added a new receiver. You might know him. His name is Davante Adams. Welcome to the Rams house, Davante Adams. That's right. The Rams are all in, signing Adams to a 2-year, $46 million deal worth $26 guaranteed. Matthew Stafford has a fresh new target. Davante Adams is going Hollywood, and Sean McVay is probably pumped to have Adams and Puka Nacua inside the same offense. In this video, I'm going to break down why I love Davante Adams to the Rams, why it perfectly makes sense for both the player and the team, and why I think he's going to be a massive upgrade over Cooper Kupp from last season, because this wouldn't have happened if the Rams didn't decide to move on from Cooper Kupp. Sometimes tough business is the best business. And sometimes when you have to say goodbye to a great player from your franchise and your team, a Triple Crown winner, a Super Bowl MVP like Cooper Kupp, sometimes that can actually become the best move possible. And that is what I believe Davante Adams is for this football team. Remember when the LA Rams fans will understand where I'm coming from. Remember when the Rams really wanted to sign Allen Robinson? This is the type of player that they were envisioning. Remember that? When the Rams wanted to make that work and make that happen. Davante Adams has been one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver in football over the past decade, 5 to 7 years, okay? Decades may be strong. But Davante Adams has been in the conversation as the best receiver in football. Now, he's a little bit past that peak. He's a bit past that prime. He does have 5 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. Even last year, playing with an absolutely brutal Raider quarterback situation for 3 games, then getting traded and playing for the Jets for 11 games, where his numbers did go up a little bit, playing with his buddy Aaron Rodgers. And no, the Rams are not going to be signing Aaron Rodgers. So we can officially put to bed Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams playing together. And honestly, I am happy about that, because if Davante Adams were to, for some reason, go with Aaron Rodgers, or would have gone with Aaron Rodgers, I just feel like his career would not be fulfilled or satisfied. Because this guy does want to win. He's the ultimate competitor. He does want to get to a Super Bowl. He does want to help a team have playoff success. And when we watch the Rams last season, late season surge, as they have done the last couple of years, go toe-to-toe with the Eagles in Philadelphia, in the snow, this is the type of player that could potentially put them over the top and allow them to compete with the Eagles and whichever NFC teams are going to be in their way. Davante Adams is a perfect complement to Puka Nacua. Nacua being the middle of the field absolute monster. Middle of the field monster. He picks up yak. He's tough. He takes on contact. He breaks tackles. He's got strong hands. He's a red zone threat. He's a rushing threat. He's everything to the Rams, right? He's the target machine. He's the chain mover. Now imagine Davante Adams, who's been the chain mover, the target machine, the first down converter, the red zone converter. Imagine that guy now at 32 years old, not quite the same player he used to be, but now he's the number 2. When's the last time Davante Adams was a number 2? Let's ask that question, right? I don't think he really was with the Jets. I mean, people like to think that Garrett Wilson was the number 1, but with Aaron Rodgers, he was featuring Davante Adams like the 1 because of their rapport and their chemistry, right? With the Raiders, Adams was asked to be the guy he was with the Packers. With the Packers, the receiver room outside of Adams was arguably the worst in the NFL. You remember that? At least for like the last couple of seasons when Rodgers was winning the MVPs. And that was when Adams was at his absolute peak, putting up 1,500-yard seasons, leading the NFL in receiving touchdowns, right? Last year, he had 1,063 yards. He caught 85 passes in only 14 games. He had 75.9 yards per game, which was up from the year previous at 67.3. This is a player that I feel is kind of, I don't want to call him ageless, right? But his game converts to playing deep into his 30s because he is a refined route runner. He's not a guy that relies on speed or physicality. He's a guy that really results come from his intelligence, results come from his footwork, results come from his detail and his hands. And those are things for a receiver that typically last the test of time, right? If Davante Adams were to go on for another 3 to 4 to 5 years and have successful NFL seasons, I'm not saying being the peak, one of the best receivers in football, but being a really useful player, that's a great number 2 option. Having a Larry Fitzgerald type of arc at the end of his career, that wouldn't shock me just because, yes, Adams has dropped a little bit from his 98 yards per game, 97 yards per game in 2020, 2021, right? But with the Raiders, even with lesser quarterback play, with Derek Carr compared to Aaron Rodgers, he had 89 yards per game in 2022. Right? And then the last couple of years, he's still been a wide receiver 1. He's a 3-time All-Pro. He's a 6-time Pro Bowler. And like I said, he has 5 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. Last year, PFF graded him as the 31st best receiver in football. And that's definitely down from his previous campaigns of being really no worse than 21st. Okay, so he was 31 in 2024, 21 in 2023. So those are his worst seasons from a pro football focus standpoint. Previous to that, his prime, he was 8th, 4th, 1st, 2nd, 4th. In 2017 and 2016, he was 13th. 2016 was sort of the beginning of his breakout. He was 46th. Okay, so that's Davante Adams. His prime being 2018 through 2022. Now he's on the back end of his prime, but still a very productive player, and he's done it with lesser quarterback play, in my opinion. I think he gets a huge upgrade with Matthew Stafford. And I love Matthew Stafford for any receiver because Matthew Stafford has proven that he can be the guy that really just makes a receiver better, right? We've seen it with pretty much everybody. We're talking about Cooper Kupp. We're talking about a Kenny Golladay. We're talking about even the greatest like Calvin Johnson. We're talking about Golden Tates or, just go down the list. Puka Nacua, taking that random guy where it was like, hey, this guy's going to be a star. And all of a sudden, yes, he is. But at the end of the day, like that probably doesn't become what it is without Stafford's influence, right? Like you could go down there's so many names that Stafford has turned into really productive receivers. And I think Davante Adams is going to fit nicely with Stafford because Stafford has this unique sense of like a wide receiver's body language, like where to place the football in contested situations, giving his receivers chances to make plays while the ball is in the air. It was obviously a point of emphasis for Adams to belong in Los Angeles or to be on the West Coast, to be in California. He is from, of course, Fresno State. That's where he attended. He grew up in California. So, a lot of people thought, could he go to the Rams? Could he go to the Chargers? Maybe the 49ers, right? I thought maybe there was a possibility he could go to reunite with Rodgers somewhere like New York is possible, but just because he played for the Jets, right? So that was possible. But the Rams made the most sense because he is at his best on the perimeter of the formation. And it feels like Stafford has not really had that guy in LA since Odell. Like, honestly, like Nacua and Kupp had too much overlap in their game. They were both slot, middle of the field players. So it was hard for both of them to get along at the same time. And it was hard for Sean McVay to kind of create openings for both players in a singular play. It was hard to feature both players. But now you have two players that operate kind of differently, right? Adams is the X receiver or the perimeter option that can work the sidelines, while you have Puka Nacua working the short, intermediate, middle of the field. Okay, so Now, the Rams do like to have a lot of condensed formations, which might even help Davante Adams just in terms of his maturity of his game, not having to rely as much on explosion and pure speed. He's never been the fastest guy, but finding ways to just create that little bit of motion or that little bit of leverage could be definitely useful for a guy like Adams. But Adams is so nuanced, so technical, so crafty. That's definitely the Sean McVay type of player. And he's like this. He's like Cooper Kupp in many ways in that regard, but he's a different role, which I think is what the Rams were looking for. And he's a guy that I feel like over the last few years, it's been a little bit misunderstood in terms of like, what does he want? Does he want to be in a place where he is regarded as an elite receiver and putting up stats and making money, or does he really want to win? And it feels like Adams over the last couple of years of dealing with the Raiders culture, dealing with what we saw in New York, like he doesn't really care about the friendships. It feels like he wants to get back to closer to Green Bay, like a good vibe, a good culture, a good coach, like a place where he knows they're going to win, they're going to compete, he's going to be happy doing that and chasing his legacy and his greatness. And that he's been very vocal about that, like chasing legacy, chasing greatness. Very vocal about that. I mean, this is a guy that has 1,100 yards in his career and 100 touchdowns. So, I mean, he's got a legacy. He's a future Hall of Famer, right? When you're at one point considered the best receiver in the NFL, you're probably going to get that done one day. But the one thing that's missing on his resume is a Super Bowl. And when you look at the Rams, they're chasing that Super Bowl championship. Sure, they need some refinement on defense for sure. They need some additions at linebacker, maybe safety, corner, things like that. Their front is pretty good. But when you've got Stafford and you've chosen to go all in on Matthew Stafford, and you've got Puka Nacua in his prime, and you've got a pretty good offensive line, and you've got Sean McVay, Davante Adams could feel like he is that missing piece, that secondary option where that could put them over the top. I mean, remember when the Rams had that just for that brief period, that Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham, even when Odell wasn't quite the same player, they were so potent in that stretch run, in that playoff run. That helped them get over the top and beat the Bucs and beat the Niners and win the Super Bowl. I mean, Odell might have won that MVP at the end of the day if he doesn't get hurt. He was very productive in all the games leading up to that. That is the type of role I foresee for Adams, is that perimeter guy that when he gets one-on-ones, he's going to torch you. He's going to feast. If you put too much attention on Puka Nacua, that's the guy that's really going to make you pay. If all of a sudden you forget about Puka, he's going to go off. If you treat them equally, it's probably going to be a Puka show, but at the same time, you've got external pieces as well. They re-signed or retained Tutu Atwell to be the speed threat and the vertical threat. You still got Demarcus Robinson, who's a very reliable, of course, very reliable player. My space is running out on my computer right now, so I've just got to make sure that this recording keeps going, guys. I know this is crazy, but yeah, I've got so much to say about this. I feel like this is a huge move for the Rams, and I think this doesn't just keep them in that NFC conversation. I think it squarely puts them into, we've got to treat them seriously as Super Bowl contenders, because they showed that with a young roster last year, with a young defense last year, with a defense that nobody thought was going to be any good. I didn't think was going to be any good. I thought they would be a decent team. I thought they would flirt with what they did ultimately in the regular season. But for them to kind of put up the fight they did against the Eagles, but then to be able to add this type of piece, like, I don't think Adams and Kupp last year were even that close to the same type of player. Like, I think some Rams fans might be in the minority. I'm not sure what you guys will think, but I feel like a lot of Rams fans might look at this as just like an older receiver that's not quite that good anymore, but even just looking at PFF grade, right? Adams was 31st in football, and Puka Nacua was 1, and Cooper Kupp was 51. Okay, so there's a pretty big difference between those guys. Even the pure production and the health. Like, Adams missed 3 games last year. He still put up 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, and maybe was a little force-fed near the end of the year thanks to Aaron Rodgers. But the year previous, he had 1,144 yards, right? You compare that to Cooper Kupp, just for example. You compare that to Cooper Kupp, who last year had 710 yards in 12 or 11 games. That's 59 yards per game. he hasn't had an 1,000-yard season since his epic 2021. Like, Kupp had 710, 737, and 812, and he was having a great 2022 before getting injured. Part of the problem with Kupp has been injuries and wear and tear. While Adams has kind of kept himself in better shape, he doesn't get injured as much. He's more of an Iron Man. Like, you look at his stretch runs, and he has these odd injuries where he misses 1 or 2 games a year, which is totally fine. But, like, he went through a stretch where he played 16, 17, 17 in 2021, 2022, and 2023. Even with the Raiders, he was playing through injuries, guys. So this is a tough player. This is a player that's really going to help the Rams in a totally different facet and way and role than what I feel like Cooper Kupp was fitting. And he's been very productive even as of late. I think people look at Adams a little bit like he's washed, and I don't necessarily think that's the case. I still think that he can separate at the intermediate level with the best of them. He's got one of the best release packages in football, which is also what Cooper Kupp kind of brought to the table. And he is going to be an extremely savvy, smart receiver for Stafford to rely on in the red zone, especially. This is a red zone weapon. The Rams at times have struggled in the red zone. This should relieve some of those struggles, in my opinion. So it's a 2-year, $46 million deal, $26 million guaranteed. It's Davante Adams going Hollywood. You guys let me know in the comments what you think. Adams to the Rams. Gronk spike the like button. It's Mitch. I'm going to be covering free agency all offseason long. If you enjoyed this discussion, you guys will love the BLV Discord. I'm going to put the link in the pinned comment. Join the BLV Discord. It is absolutely free. It's a bunch of crazy NFL fans reacting to news just like this. You guys will love it. Go check it out. Link in the description and the pinned comment. Davante Adams is a Ram. This is very exciting, and it makes the LA Rams a real threat for the Super Bowl and to finish Stafford's career on a really strong note. The Rams are not messing around. They're not messing around. This is definitely an indication of that. So I'm looking forward to the rest of their offseason. Thanks, guys, for watching. Gronk spike the like button. Peace.